Now here, it's asking us to solve each quadratic by factoring using these strategies. Okay, on the front side, we were just factoring completely, and we stopped when we got to be factored. What the difference is in the instructions is just factoring, we boxed in our answers. Now when it says solve, we still have to factor and get those factors. Then we have to use those factors and set each of them equal to 0 and solve. So for instance, on that last one, when we ended up with 3 factors, we would have 3 solutions. This one had 2 factors, so we would have had 2 solutions because we would set each individual factor equal to 0 to solve. Okay, so we're doing the same thing. We're just taking it one step further on these. So in number 7, my A value is an understood 1. So that's good. Those are the easier ones. And there's no GCF. So my A is a 1, my B is -2, and my C is -48. So I'm going to set up my X method here. So A times C, 1 times -48 is -48. And my B is -2. So I am looking for what multiplies to -48, but has a difference of -2. Okay, so the fact that it multiplies to a negative, I immediately know one is going to be negative, one is going to be positive. So I think about everything I could multiply to get 48. So I could do 48 times 1. I could do 24 times 2, 3 times 16, 4 times 12, 6 times 8, and that's the one that has a difference of 2. 6 and 8 are 2 apart, right? So it's going to be 6 and 8, but I want the 6 to be the positive and the 8 to be the negative, so that when I add them together, I get -2. So these will multiply to -48, but add to -2. Okay, so they multiply to this and add to this. So because A was an understood 1, right here, those are going to be my factors, X minus 8 and X plus 6. And I'm done factoring. Now I'm going to take it a step further, and I'm going to do this. Set each factor equal to 0 and solve for X. So I like to call this, you'll hear me say, split and solve. So I draw a line down to split the factors because I'm going to do work on the left and the right side there. So on the left, I've got X minus 8. I set that equal to 0. And I've got X plus 6. And I set that equal to 0. And then I solve each of these. So here, I would have to add the 8 over to get X alone. 0 plus 8 is 8. Over here, I would have to subtract the 6 to move it. So I would get X equals -6. So these would be my 2 solutions. So you'll notice when your factors are just X plus or minus a number, there's nothing in, no coefficient in front of X, that your factor is just the opposite sign. Because the factor, or I'm sorry, your solution is the opposite sign of the factor. It was X minus 8, so the solution was +8. This was X plus 6, so the solution's -6, because that's what you would plug in here to make this 0. Okay, and that's what your solution is. Your solution is your x-intercept, okay? It's when your y is 0, it would make your y equal to 0. Now in number 8, it's not set up ready to go for me. This one was all together, my ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0. That's not how it's set up in number 8. So I need to move some terms around first. So I'm going to have to subtract the 10x and the 24 to move them to the other side. So I'll have the x squared, and then it'll be minus 10x minus 24, and then it'll be equal to 0 because I will have moved everything from the right side over to the left. So now I'm ready to identify my A is a 1, my B is -10, and my C is -24. So A times C is -24 and B is -10. So I'm asking myself what multiplies to -24 but adds to 10. -10. Again, because it multiplies to a negative, I know I'm going to have one negative and one positive. Okay, and you can go ahead, because A is a 1, you can go ahead and set up your factors over here. They're just going to be X minus a number and X plus a number. Okay, but we're trying to figure out what those numbers are over here. So what multiplies to 24 could be 1 and 24. That difference is not 10. 2 and 12. Is the difference between 2 and 12 10? It is. Okay, but I want it to come out to -10, so I want the bigger number to be negative and the smaller number to be positive. So -12 and +2 help me create my factors. Now remember, this is all still equal to 0. So now I split and solve. So I set the X minus 12 equal to 0 and the X plus 2 equal to 0. But just like the last one, because it's just X plus or minus a number, you just get the opposite sign for your solution. So we should get +12 and -2 as our two solutions. Remember, solutions, when you're solving for X, these are numbers that if you take it and you plug it back into the original, they make it true. So if you have a multiple choice question and they're asking which of these are solutions, you can work backward from multiple choice and take the number and plug it in and say, okay, -2 squared, that means -2 times -2, that's +4. So the left side is 4. And if I plug the -2 in here, 10 times -2 would be -20. So -20 plus 24, that's 4. So 4 on the left and 4 on the right. It checks out. -2 is a solution. So you can check your answers that way, or you can work backward from multiple choice questions that way. All right, on number 9, we've already got it set up where we've got the X squared, the X, the constant equal to 0. So nothing to move. I look, there is no GCF, so I'm ready to jump straight into my X method. A is 2, B is an understood 1, and C is -3. So A times C would be -6, and the B was an understood 1. So multiplies to -6, but adds to a +1. So again, it multiplies to a negative, so I know it's got to be a negative and a positive. So 3 and 2 multiply to 6 and have a difference of 1. But I want the 3 to be positive and the 2 to be negative so that they add to +1. Now, because my A over here is not 1, I can't just say those are, it's not just X minus 2 and X plus 3. I have to do my substitution here at the B term. So -2x and plus 3x is going to replace the 1x. And then you've still got the 2x squared in front and the -3 at the end. So I create my two groups. I'm going to color code for you in green and orange. And then we do our GCF of each group. So in the green group, both of these can be divided by 2x. So 2x comes out, and what you're left with would be x minus, and then anything divided by itself, both of those reduced to 1, is 1. In the orange group, both of these can be divided by 3. So a +3 comes out, and you're left with x minus 1. And that's a good sign. We said that those leftovers should be the same. So x minus 1 is a factor. And then you bring those GCFs together. 2x plus 3 is the other factor. Now this is all, can y'all please stop talking? Thank you. So this is all set equal to 0. I've got my two factors. I'm ready to split and solve. So I split Now the x minus 1 is real easy to solve. We said when it's just x plus or minus a number, your solution is the opposite sign, so positive 1. Now this one, there's an a value in front of the x, so I actually have to do a little more work here to solve. I do have to move the constant with opposite operation, but that's not just x equals negative 3, it's 2x equals negative 3. So now I have to divide out the 2. So I end up with negative 3/2 as my second solution. All right, last but not least, we first need to get these every term to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 20 to move it to this side. So I'll have 4x squared plus 2x minus 20 equals 0. Then I'm ready to see if I have a GCF, which I do this time. All of these can be divided by what? 4, 2, and 20, you could divide by what? Well, what are the only factors of 2? What multiplies to give you 2? Gordy, do you know? What 2 numbers you can multiply to get 2? 1 and 2, right? 1 times 2 is 2. Those are the only ones. So the only factors here besides 1 is 2. Can I divide 4 by 2?
Yeah.
Can I divide 20 by 2? Yeah. So 2 is a common factor. So 2 is my GCF that I'm going to divide out. 4 divided by 2 is going to leave me with 2. And then I've still got the x squared. The 2 over 2 is going to reduce to a 1, but I've still got x. And the negative 20 divided by 2 would be negative 10. So I've taken out my GCF. Now I still have an a value other than 1 here. So my a is 2, my b is an understood 1, and my c is negative 10. So I'm looking a times c would be negative 20, is 2 times negative 10. So what multiplies to negative 20 but adds to 1, so has a difference of 1. So 1 has to be positive, 1 has to be negative. Bless you. So 20 and 1, 10 and 2, it's not divisible by 3, 5 and 4. 5 and 4 have a difference of 1, so I think that's going to be it. Now I just have to decide which one should be the positive and which one should be the negative. If I want it to add to a positive, I want the bigger number to be positive and the smaller one to be negative. So negative 4 and positive 5. But because, again, that a is not 1, I have to do this substitution and do grouping. So I'm replacing 1x with negative 4x plus 5x. Everything else stays the same. I've got the 2x squared in front and the minus 10. Okay, and then I'm just going to leave this off for now for this step, but I'm not going to forget about this. Later, I have to add that in front. Okay, so I don't forget about it. Circle it or do something so you don't forget about it. Now, when I'm doing my grouping here, I create the first 2 are a group and the second 2 are a group. In this green group, these can both be divided by 2x. So that leaves you with x minus 2. Okay, and we factored out a 2x. In orange, these can both be divided by 5. So we take out the 5, and that leaves me with x minus 2. That's a good sign. We want those to be the same. So x minus 2 is a factor. And then you bring those GCFs together. 2x plus 5 is a factor. And then this is where I said, don't forget about this GCF we took out at the beginning. Okay, so that is still there in front, like that. Okay, so when I go to split and solve here, this is all still set equal to 0. I'm going to set 2x plus 5 equal to 0 and x minus 2 equal to 0. Because my GCF that I originally took out doesn't have an x, it's not a factor that I need to solve. There's no x, so technically I can just drop it. Okay, if you want to think about dividing it over, if I divide the 2 over, what's 0 divided by 2? Still 0. So that 2 doesn't have an effect because there's no x on it. So I'm just going to drop it. And so now I'm going to do the split and solve. So here I simply add the 2 and I get x equals 2. Now over here, I've got to subtract the 5, and then I've still got to divide out this coefficient of 2. So this one I end up with -5 halves, or -5 over 2. Okay, so on the front side, we just factored. On the back side, we solved by factoring. Okay, we had to take it a step further and actually solve. So I'll leave these examples up here, but you're doing the practice in Delta Math on factoring. If you go log into your Delta Math right now, you should see it. And you've got, I think I put till Friday to complete it. So you've got a few days. What you don't finish in class today, maybe you can work on in your cat tracks or after school at home. Because remember, we're going to be doing a new TSIA topic each day leading up to that test. Okay, so that calendar one more time, just to remind you. Today is the 3rd. Okay, we talked about factoring, and we're doing a new topic each day, except Friday is your last work day in class to work on your Texas College Bridge. Okay, that's the deadline that I gave y'all for your test grade. You should be finishing your Texas College Bridge by Friday. Okay, and then we'll do a couple more TSIA topics Monday, Tuesday, and then you're taking that TSIA test on Wednesday. All right.